We're live. Yo, this is Set with Set and Media, and I'm back with another one for y'all, man. Today I got a nice little lineup. We got JD Vance coming out against Zelenskyy on Fox, and we also got the presidents talking about investments, and we got some funny liberal breakdowns for you. Let's get right into it, guys. It's going to be an exciting night. Let's get right into it. All right.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us.
Good to see you, man.
Appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Let's go back to the Oval Office Friday.
Yep.
From your perspective.
Yeah, great TV. As the president said. Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. So we have a 45-minute press conference, and the president normally does this. I mean, I've seen this now 3 or 4 times with foreign leaders where he likes to bring the media in, likes to have a conversation, but answer questions with the press. As you know, he's very open with reporters. And what I noticed is that for the first 25, 30 or so minutes, he tried to sort of bend over backwards to be gracious and kind to Zelenskyy, even when Zelenskyy was kind of needling him, even when Zelenskyy was saying things that I thought were untrue. The president just tried to be diplomatic, right? I think that's his natural instinct in that situation. And then when it really went off the rails, of course, is when I asked, or you had a Polish journalist who asked a question, the president answered it, and then I answered it. And then something about my answer just really set Zelenskyy off. So then he came at me.
So you're blaming yourself.
I'm done.
And then I went back at him.
Right.
And
I think JD Vance kind of set Zelenskyy off when he said, I'm sorry, bro, but you're going to have to find a way to work with that man, Putin. Like it or not, you're going to find a way to work with this man, Putin. I know you hate him. I know. I get it. But it's kind of your decisions that put you here. You trying to get into NATO is what like kind of brought on Putin on you. So I get that you hate him, but you got to work with him. Even if you can't trust him, well, we're going to have to put some type of faith in him.
What I tried to do originally was actually try to diffuse the situation a little bit, because I'm like, you know, we're having this meeting. Obviously, there are 100 television cameras here. Let's try to have this conversation in private. And then the president, as we kept on going back and forth, I tried again to say, well, maybe we should have this conversation in private. And the president was like, nope, actually, I don't want to have it in private anymore. I want to have this actual conversation in public for the American people to see. And I do think that there was just a certain sense of, there was a lack of respect. There was a certain sense of entitlement. And most importantly, look, we can look past all of that stuff.
I mean, yeah, and it made sense, to be honest, why Zelenskyy was so entitled. If you really think about it, for the past, since the beginning of this war, our government has been bending over backwards for him. We've been just tossing money his way, whatever explanation he got. We didn't really care what he had to say, as long as it was Putin bad. And this is where we're at. Now he's dealing with an administration that he's not too familiar with. Now he's dealing with an administration that, yo, we want peace. It's not Putin bad. We got to work with Putin now. And he's like, hold on, what's this new attitude here?
But the president has set a very clear goal for his administration. He wants the killing to stop. And I think that it's very important that President Zelenskyy and, of course, President Putin, too, they've both got to come to the negotiating table. And that's ultimately where things broke apart. I really don't care what President Zelenskyy says about me or anybody else, but he showed a clear unwillingness to engage in the peace process that President Trump has said is the policy of the American people and of their president. That's the real breakdown, is I think Zelenskyy wasn't yet there. And I think, frankly, now still isn't there, but I think he'll get there eventually. He has to.
My understanding is he tried to get back in, or tried to stay a number of times, and then made numerous calls to come back. Is that true?
I don't know about numerous calls, but they certainly made at least one request to come back in and continue the conversation. The president was like, look, first of all, they were disrespectful. And second of all, what are we even going to talk about? They've shown a clear unwillingness to discuss the peaceful settlement that President Trump is trying to bring to this situation. I think a lot of Americans are sort of, you know, it's useful to step back and ask ourselves, what is the actual plan here? You can't just fund the war forever. The American people won't stand for it. And by the way, Sean, if you look at European opinion polls, the Europeans aren't going to stand forever for it either. We need to bring this thing to a peaceful settlement. The president,
I don't know, like the way they going at it right now, it seems like they cool. Don't you know they got too many problems with it, and that's the concerning part. It's like, hey, we told the man we want peace, and then he goes up to Europe, and we're like, don't worry, bro, we got $5 billion for you to keep going against Russia. Like that's anything, to be honest.
was trying to do that. He'll continue to try to do that, but you've got to have two to
Hey, bro, in war, I ain't gonna lie, like $5 billion is like $50.
tango. You've got to have a negotiating partner in the Ukrainians who recognize that, you know, of course they have their views, and of course they're not always going to agree with us, but they've got to participate in the conversation. They weren't willing to do that on Friday, so the president said, send them home.
He said today that the war he expects will go on a very long time. I don't know where he's going to get the money to fund that war. I have my doubts that Europe will fund the war to the level that Biden and Harris would funding it. And then the issue now has come up whether or not this administration will continue to offer money and arms for this war to continue. Because without America, I would argue the president was right in saying they have no cards.
Yeah. Well, Sean, I think our European friends, frankly, are being really, they're doing a disservice to the Ukrainians because their own populations are saying, we're not going to fund this war indefinitely. The American people are saying, we don't want to fund the war indefinitely. So the only thing that is in the best interest of America, of Russia, of Ukraine, and of Europe is to bring this thing to a close.
And ain't that crazy? It ain't that crazy, bro, because it's like we're playing hot potato with Ukraine. It's like, look, bro, I don't want to fit this bill. You have it. And it's kind of been being thrown around for the past 2 years. And now that America's done with it, we don't even want to play the game of hot potato no more. We're just like, no. You can keep it. Go ahead, have it, enjoy it. Like, y'all got it, right? Like I said, it's more of a threat to y'all than us.
What happened, Sean, is you have Zelenskyy. He goes to Europe, and a lot of our European friends puff him up. They say, you're a freedom fighter. You need to keep fighting forever. Well, fighting forever with what? With whose money, with whose ammunition, and with whose lives? The president is actually taking a much more realistic perspective and saying, this can't go on forever. We can't fund this thing forever. The Ukrainians can't fight forever. So let's bring this thing to a peaceful settlement.
When I interviewed Zelenskyy, he wouldn't give me direct answers. I asked him about the mineral deal to pay the U.S. back. To me, there's 3 phases in this. And my understanding was Friday was supposed to be relatively ceremonial.
It was.
And then that it was supposed to be we signed the mineral deal. That's part 1. Part 2 would be a ceasefire. Part 3 would be the hardest part, the negotiated settlement with Putin, who, correct me if I'm wrong, said he's willing to talk peace with Trump.
Yeah, he said he's willing to talk peace. And of course,
and that's the thing that I think angers Zelenskyy, because I don't even think my man realizes what Putin was said. He's like, bro, I wanted to talk peace with Trump, not you, not Biden, but Trump. The only person that actually got some real authority in this situation right now is really the only people who got authority in this situation is Trump and Putin.
Trust but verify. We want to have the conversation. We don't assume that everything that anybody tells us is true. That's why we want to engage in this conversation. But you're exactly right, Sean. When the Ukrainians came to Washington on Friday, it was supposed to be ceremonial. There had been some public back and forth, some disagreements, some words spoken in public. And the president was like, let's have this moment. We give some credit to the brave Ukrainian fighters. And of course, it's a very brave army that they have there in Ukraine. Let's sign this minerals deal, which importantly does 2 things. It allows the American people to get some of their money back, but it also shows the Ukrainian people that America has a long-term investment in their sovereignty.
Exactly. Then that's what the mineral deal was supposed to be. Zelenskyy was talking about how can you assure security. I'm like, bro, just let us get them minerals and we'll give you all the security you need. That's what the deal was. I'm like, bro, let us get the minerals. We can make our manufacturing lower and we'll give you all the security you need stamped by the USA. That's the most official security stamp you can get in this goddamn world. But I guess he didn't see that.
You do those things. We'll sign this thing. We'll have a rah-rah moment.
Oh, guys, and do me a favor. Make sure to like the video, man. Let's get more people on the conversation by double tapping that screen or hitting the 3 dots up there by the SK Media logo. Appreciate the support, guys.
And then we'll get to the tough talk of negotiating peace. We couldn't even get the Ukrainians to a point where they could talk about.
And shout out my man Dons for starting us off with $1. He ain't had too much to say. He just want to show some love. Appreciate you, Dons.
The peaceful settlement. And look, in some ways, Sean, I get it. I get the frustration. I get the rage. It's their country. Of course, it's not our country, but you've got to accept cooler heads have got to prevail. This thing cannot go on forever. This is the important point. I'd say this to our, of course, most importantly, the Americans who are watching, but people all over the world. When you talk to leaders in private, whether
and shout out to my man Don. He says, hey, Seth, how you been, man? I ain't gonna lie, just been getting some much needed rest. A lot's been going down here. We got to tackle this month with a lot of intensity and vigor. So I've been getting some rest. And so is my man Key. Hey, appreciate the support and thanks for asking, Don. Appreciate it.
they're Ukrainian or European, when you talk to people in private, they will tell you this cannot go on forever. There aren't enough Ukrainian lives, there isn't enough American money, and there isn't enough ammunition to fund this thing indefinitely. The only realistic pathway to bringing this thing to a settlement is President Trump's pathway. We encourage both President Zelenskyy and President Putin to follow that path.
Well, I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent, and this came up in the discussion Friday. The Biden administration called Putin every name in the book, and they've been trying to get the president.
And he still invaded anyway.
Okay, he still invaded anyway. Well, remember, it depends if it's a minor incursion. Let's go back to that moment, which I thought as troops were amassing on the border. Yep. But I go back and I think about this, and Biden spent all of this money, called Putin, all of these names. The media and the Democrats, they want Donald Trump to call him names. And the president addressed that. Thing. And then he's supposed to call him and say, Vladimir, you ready to talk a peace now?
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
No, and I was standing on, bro, I made this point during the election. It's like, what do you want this man to do? You want this man to slap Putin in the face and be like, yo, we're about to make this deal? That's not how the world works. It's like, I don't know what reality y'all living in, but last time I checked, if you want to get something from somebody, you kind of got to play nice.
It's diplomacy 101, right? Is you have to have a reasonable relationship with somebody to be able to even start the conversation. We have to remember, Sean, Ukraine, half of the country, a third of the country is totally destroyed. The economy is.
And that is facts. A lot of their country is destroyed. And shout out to my man Don's. He came in with the $2 again. I appreciate the support, brother. Appreciate the support.
Depressed. You've got hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians. Of course, a lot of dead Russians as well. The president wants to negotiate a settlement. How can you negotiate if you can't even talk to somebody? And that's what he said. He's not saying, like, nobody's suggesting, as Secretary Rubio said, no one is suggesting that we give the Nobel Peace Prize to Vladimir Putin. What we're saying is it's important for President Trump to be able to have a conversation. That's not well served by standing up at a press conference and calling the guy every negative name in the book. By the way, as we just said, President Biden called Putin every single name in the book. What did it lead to? It led to war. It led to destruction. It led to conflict. President Trump is trying to bring this thing to a close. You got to be able to talk to somebody to do that.
Is the door open? President Trump said Friday he can come back if he wants peace. Is that door still open today?
What President Trump has said clearly and consistently is, of course, the door is open so long as Zelenskyy is willing to seriously talk peace. You can't come into the Oval Office or anywhere else and refuse to even discuss the details of a peace deal. Look, this is not going to make anybody happy. The Russians are going to have to give up stuff. The Ukrainians are going to have to give up stuff. You can't come to the Oval Office and say, give us security guarantees. We won't even engage with you about what we're willing to give.
And that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like it was kind of like the premise of the whole ordeal. It's like, hold on, how does Zelenskyy not see that, yo, we are going to make Russia give up some stuff, but you're going to have to give us some stuff as well. You cannot think that you're going to come out here unscathed, ready to walk into NATO. If that is Zelenskyy's vision at the end of this, then I ain't gonna lie, bro. He's delusional. He's being delusional, and he's gonna get hurt. It's gonna be a failure.
Give up. That's been the Ukrainian posture. When that posture changes, as President Trump said, when they're willing to talk peace, I think President Trump will be the first person to pick up the phone.
Well, I got to imagine that they're probably rethinking it. What did you make of European leaders, quote, their voices of solidarity this weekend? Because it's Lindsey Graham, who's been very supportive.
And shout out Daniel Castro, $2. Fox Chase said, hey, and he loves you. And ain't that cute?
Of Ukraine in this conflict. I mean, he was livid.
Yes.
And he said, if they want to now defend their own continent, let them go ahead and do it. Good luck to them.
Yeah. And my message to Ukrainians, by the way, to President Zelenskyy is, when you've lost Lindsey Graham, that means you need to come to the negotiating table and recognize Donald Trump is the only game in town. He's the only person who I think has a meaningful plan to save that country. But Sean, here's the problem with the Europeans. And a lot of these guys are our friends. They're our allies.
And shout out Don's. He says, I have a song I dedicate to liberals everywhere. Projector by Set It Off. Listen to the lyrics set and tell me what you think. I got you, Don's. I got you. Don't worry. I'm going to get it in sometime during this stream, and I won't let the music requests build up. But if you do have any video requests or music requests, if you're a member, $5. If you're not a member, $10. Appreciate the support, guys. Let's keep it going.
allies. We, of course, the president has a great relationship with a lot of European heads of state, and so do I, but they need to be realistic. And the craziest part about this, Sean, is that sometimes you'll have European heads of state who in public will puff up their chest and say, we're in it with President Zelenskyy for the next 10 years. And then in private, they'll pick up the phone and say, this can't go on forever. He has to come to the negotiating table. So I honestly don't care what the Europeans say in public. What I care is what they say in private. And what they need to be saying to President Zelenskyy is, this can't go on forever. The bloodshed, the killing, the economic devastation, it's making everyone worse off. The only pathway to, I think, back to peace and prosperity is what the president is trying to accomplish.
And now we look back in time and we see Joe Biden was beginning to understand that the patience of the American people is running thin.
That's right.
Hundreds of billions of dollars. We're a nation with nearly 40 trillion in debt. I mean, it's too much.
Well, Sean, this is an important point.
Oh God, that was the baffling part. Like, damn, we're damn near 40 trillion in debt, but we got like $100 billion, not to give to the citizens, not to help us out, but to help out Ukraine and others. Like, it made no sense.
Because I was a United States Senator, for the last 2 years of the Biden administration. I got elected in
I think you like this job better?
I think I like this job a lot better. I certainly like the president a lot better. And here's the thing, when you would talk to the Biden administration officials in private, it's another example of a terrible situation the Biden admin left the Trump administration. When you ask them, what's the plan? Okay, we're going to spend tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in Ukraine. What is your plan? And they would honestly tell you, well, we're just going to send them weapons for as long as we can and hope eventually they can turn the tide. Hope is not a strategy.
And guys, we got 150 plus y'all in here, man. Do me a favor. Let's get the likes up here. So go ahead and double tap that screen. Yes, double tap your screen real quick. Or hit the 3 dots up there in the corner to like the video. I appreciate the support. Let's get those likes up.
Throwing money and ammunition at a terrible conflict, that is not a strategy. The only guy in town with a strategy is the President of the United States, and everybody needs to follow his lead.
What scares me is Zelenskyy, when he says it's going to go on for years, how many more lives are going to be lost? He's not going to have a country to save at the end of that. The minerals deal would have provided the monies to rebuild their country and a strong U.S. presence and maybe European troops as well.
And that's what I'm saying. The man turned down the best deal he can get. He turned down a working relationship with the USA. He turned down security with the USA, and he turned down a moderator for the peace deal from the USA. It's like, dog, this was the best deal you can get, and you're overreached. You overplayed your hand, I think, as JD Vance or Trump said. It's like, what did you think we were going to do? What, just bend backwards, go with Putin's evil route with you the whole time? What, tax our people to death for you? Oh, no, we're not doing that.
This is an important part of it. The president knows that, look, if you want real security guarantees, if you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine. That is a way better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. The security guarantee and also the economic guarantee for Ukraine is to rebuild the country and ensure that America has a long-term interest. You're not going to do that if you come to the Oval Office, insult the president, and refuse to follow his plan for peace.
If he called, and I hate hypothetical questions.
Sure.
Forgive me. If he called tomorrow and said, I am ready to adopt your plan for peace, he can come back?
I think that if he called and had a serious proposal for how he was going to engage in the process, look, there are details that really matter that we're already working on with the Russians. We've already talked to some.
And if you really listen to that conversation, that was the whole ordeal. It's like, bro, are you going to be able to engage in peace talk with Putin? You can't sit here and say Putin's evil. You can't trust him. I don't trust him. And then I'm like, bro, how are we going to come to the solution? You're basically telling us we should all put our hands up and just let you get destroyed by Putin. I mean, bro, NATO's not going to put boots on the ground for you. Europe is not going to put boots on the ground for you. They're willing to deal with you now, throw you a nice little 5, but how long is that going to go?
Some of our allies.
Oh, and shout out Don's, man. Appreciate the support. He sent in, well, two $1 super chats. Appreciate the support, brother. Let's see.
My man.
He needs to engage seriously on the details. I think once that happens, then absolutely we want to talk.
Are you convinced Putin and the Russians are willing to meet them? I don't want to say the word halfway. They're willing to do their part to achieve a negotiated settlement.
Am I convinced? No. But do I
Trust
think
and
that there's a
verify.
real pathway? You got to trust but verify. You've got to engage in the negotiation. You've got to see what steps people are willing to take. This is another thing, Sean. Obviously, I'm biased because I really love the guy. But when the media attacks President Trump as somehow on the side of Putin, two big problems with that. First of all, the only president in 20 years where you haven't had the Russians take a bunch of territory was under the first term of Donald J. Trump. The second part of that is you've got to actually accept that President Trump, he's not just assuming that everything the Russians tell him is true. He's negotiating with them. There's a give and take. There's a trust but verify. That's called diplomacy. We used to have some respect for that in Washington, D.C.
Man, I mean, he not wrong. The man's not wrong. But before we get into Trump's speech, well, not speech, but talk on investments, let's get into something a little bit more funnier and let's watch some liberal meltdowns over the whole Trump and Zelenskyy confrontation. Let's go.
This talks about him wearing a suit. I hate the country.
Oh my God.